Welcome back, folks. Today we're diving into the um, fascinating dynamics of a controversial figure who seems to never admit
Yep,
defeat. His narrative is all about, Trump knows he's about to lose, a statement that really cuts to the chase.
absolutely. It's like every time the results come in, instead of owning it, he immediately starts inventing reasons. Um, Reasons that defy logic, right?
Exactly. And the whole script really lays out how his behavior is, you know, a mix of
Hmm.
overconfidence and um, panic. Take the part about winners don't demand voter rolls from all 50 states. It's like, well, winners focus on facts, not wild spreadsheet demands.
Right. There's that pointed observation that he expects transparency to turn into some sort of elimination tool. It's a little ironic, isn't it? How he criticizes others for fraud while, well, he's calling fraud before even the votes are in.
Oh, absolutely. It's like he's preemptively preparing for defeat. Pre-crying fraud, pre-offended, pre-lawsuit, everything is
Yeah.
pre-staged. It's almost like a script for panic rather than a strategy for winning.
And that segues right into the piece on strongman fragility. Strongmen supposedly exude confidence, but then here we see an insecure um, posture where he ends up, well, whining about the process instead of standing firm.
Right, it's a fascinating contradiction. I mean, winners focus on building momentum, and here, instead of focusing on actual campaign strategy, he's got this obsession with voter rolls. I mean, who expects to suddenly flip through spreadsheets if they
Hmm.
haven't been reading their briefings?
Exactly. And that um, obsession with voter rolls is another layer because it suggests that if you can't win by votes, you disqualify the voters instead. It's almost like reducing democracy to um, a game of numbers where the rules keep shifting.
Um, yeah, it's rather like trying to shrink democracy until it fits
Right.
your narrative. And then there's the segment on projection. Everything he accuses others of, he seems to be doing himself. Do you see that?
For sure. It's like the projection mechanism here is his operating system. When you call fraud before the votes are even in, it's like you're deflecting responsibility by putting the blame somewhere else.
Exactly. And honestly, it amounts to a kind of preemptive strike, sort of a way to, avoid the sting of a
Hmm.
loss by declaring it unfair before the outcome. But I have to wonder, isn't that a bit um, more about his insecurities than any actual fraud?
That's a sharp observation. I mean, you can argue that taking this route is essentially a way to avoid accountability, yet some would say it's a masterful play. But truly, it seems like a mix of both his um, bravado and deep seated vulnerability.
Yeah, it's like he's constructed this entire persona, a billionaire ex president who always sees himself as the victim of um, some grand injustice.
Yeah,
And that notion of being oppressed by even the ballots themselves really underscores how, instead of accepting loss gracefully, he positions himself as, well, eternally wronged.
exactly. And then when you look at it from the perspective of calm versus chaos, it's pretty telling. The loudest person in the room often is masking the weakest arguments behind all that bluster.
Right. And there's a clear contrast there. While true strength in leadership often comes from calm, measured decisions, here we see chaos, loud, frantic outbursts that don't um, really hold up under intense
Hmm.
scrutiny.
And that brings up an important point about how behavior often speaks louder than words. While his words are loud and, well, dramatic, his actions sometimes reveal an entirely different, more insecure narrative.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to consider the final takeaway. Democracy doesn't care about feelings. It cares about
Right.
ballots. So, if the focus shifts from actual policy and leadership to emotions and theatrics, then we're in serious trouble.
Yeah, it's a kind of hijacking of the democratic process itself. Instead of working on tangible issues, it's all about personal vendettas and, well, emotional manipulation.
Hmm.
And that's where the real danger lies.
Um, exactly. And let's talk a bit more about this voter suppression angle. The idea that if you can't win over voters, then you resort to disqualifying them or shrinking the electorate. It's a really alarming notion.
Yeah. It's like If you're not getting the votes, then instead of engaging, you go after the voters directly. And that reflects a kind of desperation, doesn't it? Disqualification of voters instead of earning their trust and support.
Yeah, it implies that the whole game becomes about manipulation of the democratic framework rather than genuine engagement
Right.
with citizens. And it underscores that deep-seated fear of losing even when the evidence points otherwise.
And honestly, when you think about the segment on projection again, it highlights another twist. Every time he lashes out about fraud, it almost feels like a way to offload his own failings onto others. It's a self fulfilling cycle,
Yeah.
really.
Um, yes. The entire dynamic is, you could say, a pathological narrative of blame shifting. Rather than confronting an actual electoral loss, he strategically positions himself as a martyr, a victim of, well, systemic injustice.
And that narrative, as predictable as it is, becomes a sort of operating manual for his public persona. It's like he's set on facing perpetual opposition, constantly claiming that the system is rigged, even when, everything points to a legitimate process.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, isn't it more about self-preservation than about genuine polity? I mean, if you always act as if you're wronged, you can, in some twisted way, justify any defeat or any challenge to your power.
Yep. There's a kind of irony in that. The louder the claims of injustice, the quieter the acknowledgement of genuine loss. And that, in a way, is a dangerous mindset to percolate within any political system.
Right. And it's concerning because it means the very fabric of democratic discourse might be, degraded into a cycle of claims and counterclaims rather than reasoned debate and accountability.
And let's not forget that part where his narrative turns on the idea that if he's losing, the system is inherently rigged against him. That's a fundamental challenge to the entire concept of fair elections.
Absolutely. It's like when losing becomes illegitimate by definition, then the whole idea of winning becomes optional. You're not really contesting the results, you're contesting the legitimacy of the process itself. That's a slippery
Right.
slope, isn't it?
It really is. And it reminds me of the point about calm versus chaos. True leadership involves a steady hand, not a barrage of emotional outbursts that try to muddy clear outcomes.
Hmm.
Sometimes the calmest voice carries the most truth.
Exactly. When you compare that to the chaos of preemptive anger and lawsuits before a decision is even made, it becomes clear that using noise as a strategy is, well, inherently flawed.
Yeah, right. Because the loudest person is frequently the one who, in reality, is struggling to make their point in a meaningful way. It's almost a misguided strategy of covering insecurity with volume.
Um, yes, indeed. And if we step back a moment, you realize that this whole approach is essentially about, controlling the narrative. It's like trying to rewrite the story before the final chapter is even written.
Yep. And that narrative control, when prioritized over actual facts and ballots, essentially undermines the very foundation of democratic institutions.
Exactly. When you start to prioritize feelings and narrative over tangible results, you run the risk of detaching from the reality of um, democratic processes.
hmm
Democracy thrives on facts, on ballots, not on emotional theatrics.
And that's the ultimate takeaway here. People may lie with words, but truth is ultimately in behavior and, you know, concrete actions. The reality of our political system isn't swayed by dramatics, it's governed by results.
Yep, and that's why it's so important to look at these dynamics critically, not to dismiss the theatrics completely, but to understand that behind all of it lies a deeper struggle over, you know, legitimacy and democratic integrity.
Right. Now, I have to say, though, there's a bit of a debate here. Some might argue that this constant narrative play is, in its own way, effective marketing. But can we really equate that with strong leadership?
I'd respectfully challenge that notion. Effective marketing shouldn't come at the cost of eroding trust in the democratic process. When your brand of leadership depends on fabricating a victim narrative, it does more harm than good.
Right. It's a delicate balance. But at the end of the day, the metrics of a fair election don't care about brand or personal narratives. Democracy cares about ballots and facts.
Exactly. And as we wrap this up, it's crucial to remember that while dramatic rhetoric grabs headlines, the true measure of leadership is found in
Yeah.
consistent, accountable behavior. In the end, actions speak far louder than preemptive outbursts.
So, folks, keep questioning, keep analyzing. And remember, the legitimacy of our democracy is measured not by the loudest voice, but by um, the integrity of our electoral process.
Well said. Democracy isn't about feelings. It's about facts, ballots, and ultimately accountability.
Right.
Thanks for joining us. And until next time, stay curious and keep thinking critically.